We're in the Regenerative Insight Circle, and I'm really happy to have Camara Cassin with us, who's going to explain what Masterminding Eden is all about. So thank you for being with us.
You're so welcome. Thank you for asking me to come and share with your community. I'm excited. So my name is Camara Cassin. I'm 44 years old. I'm the mother of 4 kids. My oldest is 22 and my youngest is 9. I studied permaculture design, alternative energy generation, natural building, and then environmental science technology. And then through life experience, having a child who was terminally ill, I learned how to blog, advocate, crowdfund, and network. And then I turned that into a networking business after she died. Like I was doing social media marketing for different companies. And Masterminding Eden is something that I think the world needs. Because the question that has stuck with me ever since I went to school was, how can humanity live on a planet in a way that is self-sustaining and regenerative, a way that's good for people and good for the planet? And why aren't we doing that? And there are just so many pieces to it. You know, like if you look at all the different pieces, I think you can give it the name the meta crisis. Like there's components in like how we build, what materials you use, what pollutants we're producing, how we interact with each other, how our energy transacts, our different currencies and fiat systems and debt, our deforestation and overconsumption, and all the different pieces. There's so many different pieces. So how can we actually come up with a system quickly that would provide humanity a way of living in symbiosis with the planet that doesn't go back to being cavemen or to being hunter-gatherers, because they were in symbiosis with our planet. But I don't think any of us really want to give up, you know, the ability to zoom in with people from around the world on our computers. You know, I think we want to keep some high technology. And I don't think that we need to completely give up advancement. I believe that we can find a way to be both regenerative and high tech. And of course, there's room for low tech. It's not always the highest tech solution that is the best one. Sometimes it's the lowest tech one. You know, for instance, with carbon scrubbing, the best method is greens, like regreening the planet. Carbon capture devices don't come close yet. So in the chat, I've posted a few links. The one is to our website. The other is to our LinkedIn page. And the next is to my personal LinkedIn. And I would invite you to connect. And so in those questions, what I came to was, it's so big. The globe is so big and there's so much happening and there are so many people. How on earth can we come up with a system? And so if I kind of look at it as the experience of being human is kind of hollow fractal, you know, like as within, so without. And that the smallest elements of a system are often holograms of the bigger, or the bigger is holograms of the smaller, like the way a human cell has all these little pieces, or organelles, the way a human body has organs, right? So what if we go down to the smallest point of which we could create a system that would work for humanity and the planet? And what would that be? What would be the smallest unit of actual closed loop, self-sustaining, regenerative human habitation? And I think it's a city, although I don't like that word because cities now are anything but regenerative. Cities are decimating our planet right now. So if anyone has a better word, let me know. But we call it a city. I think of it as a settlement or a colony for our planet Earth, where we're bringing experts from 18 different fields, around 300 of them, to come together to conceptualize and design a regenerative, self-sustaining city. So how is it regenerative? Well, it's regenerative in several ways. It's regenerative by looking at culture and how we communicate, interact, engage, socialize, transact. It's regenerative in our outputs. How can we make sure that we're not polluting? That our outputs from the systems are actually good, like compost or biostimulants or other things. And I don't have all the answers for these questions. And I don't think you guys, any one person has all the answers, which is why we're gathering a lot of people trying to get specific areas of expertise to try to create a more comprehensive answer. Like, how can the other piece, sorry, is we've flown by 1.5 degrees Celsius, and our weather patterns are getting extremely disrupted. And we're seeing hurricanes off the coast of Canada and Ireland. And it's only going to get worse before, and even if we manage to start shifting it back and regreening the planet and restoring ecosystems, we're still going to see an increase in extreme weather over the coming decades. And how do we create infrastructure and housing and habitation that can keep people safe through these storms? We don't even know how bad these storms are going to get, but they could get a lot worse than they already are. And so we need to prepare for wind, flooding, firestorms, blizzards, and drought. And the thing about massive climate disruption is that we're going to see increased conflict, increased food insecurity, increased pestilence, like all the four horsemen of the apocalypse, you know what I mean? So Masterminding Eden is an initiative of people. It's not a company yet, although it is going to be incorporated as a co-op in which the participants and contributors are each steward owner members of the co-op. And together we are going to do our best to come up with a conceptual model for this smallest unit, this city. And then we're going to simulate it in the digital using artificial intelligence and advanced simulation world building technology. And then the next step is to create a game that we can spread around the world to help people experience what it's like to live in this environment. And we can also use that to test the model like millions of times to see what needs to be improved before we build it in the real. And this can happen very quickly because of advanced technology now. And so that is my 15 minutes on Masterminding Eden. And my question for you guys, obviously I'll answer questions, but my question for you guys is, if you were going to nominate somebody to help design the future of human habitation on Earth, who would you want to see there? And now I'll take questions.
Okay, I'd like to be there. Camara, you and I are scheduled actually to meet later this week, but yeah, my short answer is I would like to be a part of that, but I definitely could give you a list as long as my arm, so I won't tie up the bandwidth here since we're going to talk soon. I'll give you two names that immediately come to mind. Paul Stamets with Fungi Perfecti, well, Michael Smith, who you already know, and John Todd out on the East Coast with, ocean arcs and living machines and that sort of thing. So those are my three nominees that come immediately to mind.
Thank you, John. I encourage you to just hit the apply button, and by everyone who applies becomes collaborators in our online collaboration platform, even if you don't get to go to the actual in-person event. So if you want to be involved, apply and you're in. Michael Smith is involved. So something I left out is that I work with Regenerative as their systems weaver. So I help make connections and I do odd jobs as needed. And Regenerative builds biorefineries. They're algae-based biorefineries that take biomass waste and translate them into biostimulants and biochar and energy. You might have seen the movie The Need to Grow. That's the system. And so for the last couple of years, we've been working on making it better. Michael's been tinkering with some new inventions. One of them is a plasma dragon, so that some of the inputs could be things other than wood waste and agriculture waste. Like, what if we could actually pyrolyze human sewage and use it to create the same stuff? Or what if we could use plastics and have different methods of cleaning up? So Regenerative, they're going to be participating. I think that the Natural Solutions Engine and the Earth Power Lodge is a key component of this whole thing. Like, how do we take something that's been previously considered waste and use it to its highest good to sequester carbon, produce energy, and grow organic, healthy food? And also we can use the biostimulants and biochar not only on agricultural crops, but also on devastated ecosystems, because what it does is it feeds the soil microbiome. And in many cases, we've destroyed the soil around the world, which you guys probably know about. Thanks for writing a list, guys. Who else has questions for me? Or even comments or critiques, quite honestly, because I'm open to creative criticism.
Yeah.
Hi, Camara. Thank you so much for this beautiful project that you've woven together. I'm curious about the price tag, which is pretty high, and yeah, why is it not so accessible?
So we have scholarships and subsidies available. So the price that is there reflects the cost of the event. It reflects our expenses. So the venue itself is $600,000 to rent for the month. Then plus the cost of paying our facilitators and staff and security and media people, and the cost of feeding everyone because it includes meals and accommodation. So that's why the price is what it is, because life has expenses. But if you really think about it, $2,500 up to $8,000 for a month in Switzerland with food and accommodation is really not very much money. Go ahead, Carl.
So, I actually would invite, like John, a call sometime soon. As an architect who, and many people have heard some of my sort of thoughts, but as an architect who's been asking these questions for some time, but through the lens of an architect who builds things, which brings a certain a level of experience, like what things work and don't work. And I'd also claim that regarding natural materials, I have had experience that makes me probably a real expert on natural material versus what we call unnatural materials, which I'm not sure that's in itself a discussion that's worth having. But just for example, I think the main natural material that our industry uses, wood, the way it's processed is not at all natural, and I think is enormously responsible for degrading the single most important thing that we need to improve, which is our soil health. So I've become a big believer in the biotic pump in cooling the planet, and not to talk too long, but from my work, I've become a passionate believer and sharer of a community in Davis, California, which has demonstrated both the way it's designed, but also because it's 50 years old, it demonstrates like how to do it and what works after 50 years. So it's extremely resilient. And perhaps a list of things that are wonderful about it, but one being designed to capture stormwater And after 50 years of this ecological system, the community is 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the rest of the very hot regional climate.
That's
And people
significant.
will live there through that very hot summer without air conditioning. So there's lots of really great evidence of these important questions they were asking. So that's for me. Lumber is big. The lumber industry is right up there with the oil industry. We're being taught that it's something that it's not, and it's enormously responsible for degrading our planet the way it's processed. So anyway,
Yeah. Even when I go, like I live in British Columbia, in the mountains, in the forest, and when I go up the logging road to just go on an adventure, I look at the replanted clear cuts from 20, 30 years ago, and they're all monocultures, and it just looks like an alien landscape, like something that is not at all natural.
This is a kind of a more recent insight, but also specifically within the context of the LA fires. I mean, I would just add to that absolutely, yet my industry believes that our magic wood comes from forests, and it does not. But like any other monocrop agricultural product, the product that is produced is an inferior wood product that burns 8 times faster than old lumber. So it's so much to share, but anyways, that's
Or maybe you want to share the articles that you've written articles about the place in Davis. You could share that in the chat if you want, right?
Sure. Yeah.
The Village Homes, right? So what it's
Yes.
called? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Cool. I mean, just so for credibility beyond myself, Jeff Lawton from the Permaculture Institute thought that it should be a World Heritage Site
In Davis?
in Davis, California.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Carl. I'm interested to know more. Andrew was talking about an article. Will you please share it?
Yeah, I'll share a PDF.
Thank you.
Remember?
Roberta was just saying in the chat, she says, I believe most advanced human-centric AIs could be of huge help to this community, both in design, simulation, and also decision-making. And I agree with you. So we've already started forming our AI team. We've got people from Futura, from University of Berkeley, Shalini, I think she might be part of this community. Shalini Golpakin, I might be saying her last name wrong. She's a doctor in artificial intelligence and world simulation. But we're looking for even more people who have experience in that, because that really is a key component. So as part of what I'm doing now in talking to people, I'm reaching out to individuals to invite them to check it out and to either apply or send it on to people that they think might be interested. And I'm also approaching companies for collaboration and sponsorship. And some people might say, well, what do we get out of this, or who's benefiting from this? And that's why we've created the co-op, so that anybody who's involved benefits. And also our outputs are going to be held in Creative Commons with copyleft licensing, so that people can use it and expand from it. And the goal isn't just to create one bomb-proof self-sustaining city, but to create a framework that can be adapted around the planet and also used to retrofit existing infrastructure. And not infrastructure might be the wrong word, but existing systems. Because if we really crack the code on how we can do this well, then that can influence other areas of society.
Yeah, RTS is their link or a contact to follow up on. Camara posted something at the beginning. There's mastermindingeden.com. And anything else you want to share, Camara?
I can post it again.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
If I can insert myself real quick, my comment was to Artie in response to her comment. So sorry if I confused anybody there.
David, did you?
asking.
Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to talk over you, John. Did you finish? Yeah, well, I was just thinking, Camara, that I haven't grokked the city concept yet, but I've definitely been excited by kind of bioregionalism as the organizing construct. And I don't know how you think about those two kinds of things, but there definitely seems to be energy around bioregionalism as the notion. So I'd be curious to hear your reaction to that. And then just an offer, if there are things that we could be doing through a GRC structure to kind of help, I don't know, whatever, organize, recruit, comment, anything like that, just please bring it in, because it feels like this is exactly the kind of conversation that folks in here would be interested in at least listening in on, or if not participating in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do I have time to address the question about cities?
Yeah, please, could you do that? And then not to interrupt you, but if you could do that, and let me ask if you could just explain a little bit about what you expect to happen between now and July, and like sort of what is the expected flow of activities, participation, and so on, so people understand sort of where are we in the process. That would be great. And then I'll come back on the link I put in the chat in a little while. Go ahead.
So our population is increasing and increasing, and more of our population is moving into cities, and we have massive urban sprawl, and it's disgusting, and it's taking over ecosystems. It's taking over fields and prairies and mountains and valleys, and we are cutting off wildlife from accessing their habitat, and it's unnecessary. So one of the reasons why I think high density human living is a regenerative solution is because we can build up. If we build upwards instead of outwards and have shared systems that create efficiencies, there's no need for sprawl. So maybe that it helps a little bit with grokking the city vision. And then where we're at now is we've just launched the website and our applications, and we've got about a month to accept applications. And then we are going to work on selecting participants. And at that time, that's when we will send out invitations to people who have applied to participate and offering them scholarship or subsidy if we have that for them. And then we start working for 3 months prior to the event in Switzerland online together in our collaboration platform, which has been sponsored to us by a company called Futura. They have a platform called Symbiosis. So it's a neat place. It's got a similar feel to almost like a community social network, but not. You can embed things like Slack or Miro boards or documents. You can share files, you can analyze data, you can link in artificial intelligence right into it. It's pretty cool to have it all in one place. And it's based on holonic circles. So each different focus group has a circle within the cluster that is Masterminding Eden. So that's how we're organizing and working on our governance collaboratively, collectively, while still being able to make decisions and promote sovereignty and freedom. So once people are onboarded into that, they start talking and communicating about their area of expertise, their knowledge, their ideas, their wicked problems, and get to know each other. And then the first week of the event is Summit Week. And in Summit Week, every different group gets to give a presentation to the whole of the attendees on their current system state, whether it's, so for instance, the regeneration sector people can give a hour-long presentation to all 300 experts on what is regeneration, what is the current state of our degenerated systems, what are some of our wicked problems, and what are some of the best solutions that we found. And you summarize that in an hour, you present it to everybody. And when we allow all the different groups to do this, it ends up creating a big picture overview so that everybody comes from a basic layer of understanding of what's going on in the whole. And it really starts to get people thinking and popping off synergies and conversations and collaborations. And then in the next week, we have different, the next week is inquiry week. And we're moving people from 2 different groups. So you don't need to know all 300 people. You only need to know 20. Okay. There's 20 people approximately in the systems group. And there's 20 people in your multidisciplinary group. So I guess you need to know 40. And by having people in a systems group and in a multidisciplinary group where there's one person from each of the systems groups, we're able to have more collective intelligence with only 1 degree of separation between them. We're also using advanced AI to record all the group conversations, summarize, transcribe, and also add input into it while constantly feeding our live update database that everybody can access to find out where things are at in a specific place at any given time. So at a specific place in the Masterminding Eden event, like in the conversations that are being had. Like for instance, if I'm in the regenerative agriculture team and I'm curious, well, what's the energy team thinking about how we're going to power the lights in the greenhouse? Then I can just ask our AI what the energy team is thinking, and it's going to let me know. But I could also ask in person in my next multidisciplinary group meeting, if that makes sense. So that's how the people aspect works. So after inquiry week, we have ideation and imagination week, where we put all the puzzle pieces on the board that we think we should use. And the last week is synergy week. And that's when we choose the pieces that we're going to use and put together into a framework. And then following that, we should have a comprehensive document at the very least that can be then simulated and taken to the next stage of development and visualized, so that people can really see what what the thought process is. And then after the event itself, this doesn't stop. This initiative continues with further simulation and testing and gamification and real world building. And it's not meant to be a cookie cutter. Like it's not something that you can just put in Canada and put in Mexico and what it's meant to be is adaptive. So the framework itself kind of sets some parameters for what will work, and then you can adapt it to the bioregion, to the place, because design is often place-based design. But there are some things that are common, like humans need bathrooms and humans need food and water and resources. And how can we manage the resources so that there isn't waste, and so that we don't always need to be mining? Can we mine landfills instead and put it through a pyrolyzing regenesis machine that can separate molecules into different elements so that we can reuse them? I think the answer is yes. The technology is available. We just need to incorporate it. There's that, like I said, that technology already exists, but a lot of the garbage companies are actually blocking it because it's going to cut into their profits. Like we need to change the way the system incentivizes goodness. And that's what the gamification is for. All right, that was a lot. John.
Yeah, thank you. This is super interesting. I'd like to go back real quickly to when you're opening remarks. You said, "What's the smallest unit?" This is picking back up on David's comment as well as Carl's comment in the chat, and I think we're all kind of not stuck, but thinking about this smallest unit concept that you mentioned. And when you very first said, "What's the smallest unit at which?" and I don't remember exactly how you framed the question, but my mind actually went to the individual, and because that's kind of how my model is set up. But it's interesting to me, this notion of the city as the smallest, however you said that, smallest workable unit, but I'm wondering,
ability to be self-sustaining closed loop.
Yeah. So I think my question would be like, based on what you just said, this last comment is with the idea of regenerative agriculture, the role of forests, like I'm wondering, are you envisioning a city that doesn't need like agricultural land or in and around it and or forests around it? Or, I mean, is it that closed loop?
So
That makes sense.
There's two different answers. There's my personal vision of what I would like to see, and then there's the collective vision of what will come out of Masterminding Eden. And I cannot predict it, but I can tell you my personal vision. I would love to see Earth be rewilded and humans have our own space where we are less impacting the ecosystems that other life forms, our brothers and sisters here, need to live. So I would love to see a city surrounded by forest, I guess you could say. And like I said, I think maybe the word city is a misnomer. What word would you use to describe like a community that is high density of approximately 10,000 people that produces its own power, food, water recovery, waste circularity, where they live, work, play, ideate, co-create, and also have industry? Like, what would you name that?
That sounds like a
Yeah,
city.
I was just want to reinforce. Yeah, community was the term that came to my mind, but that is with some sort of linguistic bias about what city means or can mean.
Yeah. That probably was a pretty clear distinction between a regenerative framework and a sustainable framework or something like that. Because I think in a regenerative framework, you would argue that people are part of nature. So the conservation model where we're trying to remove people from nature is like an old framework. The modern framework or very old framework, whichever way you want to go, would be more of an integration where people have a responsibility into nature and perhaps a special role because of our brains, but that we are participating in service too. And so you wouldn't want to separate us out and have a conserved area and a human area. You would want us to be, we're integrated in all of it.
Yeah, I feel like perhaps I didn't communicate that well. What I meant was that our physical infrastructure doesn't need to infringe on every inch of the planet. That we could with strain or constrain our physical infrastructure better. That doesn't mean completely separating humanity from going out into the forest or being a part of that or doing agriculture outside. But I do think that a combination of indoor and outdoor agriculture is important. For instance, in Spain, a few months ago, they had that huge storm that decimated crops, crushed a bunch of greenhouses. Are you guys familiar with that storm? So I believe that in order to, and maybe believe's the wrong word, I hypothesize that we should be growing more food indoors and finding ways to make that feasible and nutrient dense and organic in order to protect it from potential extreme weather events. And how do we do that in a way that we can feed enough people for an extended period of time if crops are decimated? Because it wouldn't take much for a worldwide food shortage at this point. Like, I think it's just 1 or 2 seasons of poor weather in the north, like Canada, Russia, Ukraine, Europe. If our wheat crops and oat crops and stuff were destroyed, there would be massive shortage there for both for feeding animals and also for feeding people. And then if we look at the potential of Antarctic ice sheet collapse, like the Thwaites Glacier is moving really rapidly right now, which could actually, some say, have an increase of more than 3 meters of sea level rise in 24 hours if it collapses, which would flood I think 40% of the world's rice crops. Now, please don't quote me on that. Do your own research and look it up, but that's terrifying. I really like rice, and a lot of people depend on it. So I don't like focusing on the negative, but I do like to be pragmatic, and I don't think business as usual is going to work anymore. And how are we going to address the future that we're going to be living in, and how are we going to turn the ship around so that we can create a new Holocene? You know, how are we going to regreen the planet, regenerate ecosystems, and still have an advanced human civilization? It's a big question, and I don't have all the answers, but I'm hoping that if we can get together enough people from different areas of expertise, that maybe we could come up with something better than what we've got. Not a utopia, but something better than what we've got.
Good point. Can I just interject, please? Because we've got about 7 minutes left.
Of course.
One question coming from Michaela, why Switzerland? And then I put in a resource that you might want to look at. It's a book called Total Reset by a fellow named Greg Campbell. And Greg spent about 20 years living with an indigenous community called the Gularabalu in Australia. And he's taken that experience and extracted it into some principles for living that are fascinating, including the right size for a community. So I just recommend it. It's really, really interesting. And then, sorry, one more thing. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet, let's give preference to anyone who hasn't asked a question or made a comment. If you'd like to do so, now's your time. But back to you, Camara.
Thank you. I just downloaded that document. Thank you for bringing my attention to it. I think another thing I didn't mention so far on the call is that one of our focus groups is Indigenous wisdom keepers and spiritual teachers. So we're not all about physical, we're about cultural, societal, human, heart-centered, multidimensional beings that we are. So it's a big topic, it's a big thing, and it's hard to convey in a short amount of time, and I've done my best. And I agree that bioregions are super important, and I mean, maybe there are some self-sustaining bioregions, but we've got such a global market right now, and so much stuff is being shipped and made in different countries. And I mean, if the storms get bad enough that we cannot transport, or that we lose power, or have severe infrastructure destruction like they saw in Western North Carolina, where they have no roads, no power, no food, no water, and it happens in more than one place at a time. Like, imagine 5 states got hit instead of just Western North Carolina. They haven't even solved the problems there yet. Then what are you going to see? Is cascading systems collapse, like civilizational collapse. At least it'll happen in small areas and countries first, and then it could eventually become global. So how can we prevent that and still have computers and internet and artificial intelligence? That's all.
Okay. Braden has her hand up, and
Okay, Braden.
anyone else who hasn't spoken, please go ahead after Braden.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. No, I was just gonna say that I get what you when you're describing about like this sort of self-sustaining unit. I also think about sort of like how you can perceive something as discrete. So when you look at a map, or like when you look at like a what's it called, satellite, where humans are sort of clustered in groups that are like organized amongst themselves, that's usually a good like a way, like whether that's a big city or a smaller town, It's sort of like a locality that humans are able to organize around, but they're not like completely isolated from each other. And it's the same with like bioregions. You can see them on maps. They're like they are distinct, but they're not separate. They're all interconnected. And so I feel like the approach of like focusing on like what a locality could look like is sort of like a piece of the broader, if you're looking at it from many different sort of fractal levels, all the way up to the planetary level. How can, for example, the bioregional efforts complement what's happening in a specific locality and vice versa? And then how do things happening in a more that relate to more planetary consciousness and connecting all species and all humans together relate to the individual components and the mutual flow of information, resources, ideas. So I was just, yeah, I don't necessarily like think that it's an either or scenario. Like it's very much like everything is interwoven. So it's very much like I see a lot of potential in how it could work, especially when there's dialogue between all the different types of people working on it. Yeah.
Thank you, Brayden. I hope I didn't come across as saying it's a either or, because it's certainly not.
No, I didn't think that it was like you specifically. I just know that sometimes like there's like people are focusing on different things. And so like sometimes like I come across people who like they'll like make a point, but it's because they think that point is important and should be included. And so it's like everything is like a cohesive whole. And so I'm excited that we can integrate this perspective into the cohesive whole.
Me too. Thank you so much, everyone, for giving me the space to share. This is my life's work, and I am honored to share with you. And thank you for everything that you're doing in your lives in your own unique way to support change and regeneration of Earth. Lots of love to all of you.
Thank you, Camara. Thanks, everyone. Come on back. We do it every week. Camara, just as Dave said, there's other opportunities here, and we can talk. And if we want to post this in the GRC, I bet there are other people who will drop in on the recording as well. So that's it for now, folks. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Camara.